Hiya crafters, Amy here with Amy's Wares, and I have some simple Copic coloring and a cute cactus critter card. I'm going to use this older stamp set from My Favorite Things. If it is still available, I'll link it in the video description box below with all the other products that I used. I have my hex chart from Sandy Allnock and a smattering of some green Copic markers to color in these cute little critters. Now, in a moment, I'll show you a photo of the finished card that I will pull together here for you. I did do some very simple stenciling in addition to the coloring and added some really cute blingage. So I do have most of this sped up just so the video isn't too exceptionally long, but you will see the way that I do Copic color, which is maybe a little bit different than a lot of the other crafters out there. And that's simply just because I don't have the time or the patience to do the amazing blends that often you'll see these very talented crafters do. So here I'm just loading up my mini Misty with a bunch of these stamps, putting them all over an A2 size panel. So that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and that is Nina Classic Crest Solar White 110-pound cardstock. And I'm just squeezing as many as I can on this little sheet of paper and using the magnet to hold it down, and then I am going to stamp it with a Copic friendly ink. Now this is Gina K Amalgam, so this particular ink says it can be used with, you know, water-based or basically all the things. You could do Copic, you could do watercolor. I mainly just use it for Copic coloring because if I'm doing watercolor, then I prefer my VersaFine and things like that. So I do have this sped up a little bit, but you will see my process of coloring. Basically, I don't do a ton of color blends. I tend to pick just a couple colors that are kind of a light and a dark for each critter. In this case, I have kind of I don't know, a more yellowy green blend and then more kind of like a blue-green blend. And I'm kind of just mixing it up as I go. I do end up kind of mixing all the colors together and getting slight variations, but as you can see, even though it's sped up, I am moving really quickly. My style is kind of scribbling, for lack of a better term. I don't like to spend a lot of time. I don't want to put too much ink down. I kind of like the whimsical scribbly look. I feel like it works with a lot of the stamps that I tend to gravitate towards, and it's time saving. So I usually work light to dark. Occasionally I'll work dark to light. It just kind of depends on whatever's in my hand, to be honest. But I do find that light to dark typically works better for me just because sometimes I've found that if I go dark to light, I end up having too much dark and not enough room for the contrast of the light. But you can see here I'm quite literally scribbling down color and not trying to get a perfect blend. I do feel like with alcohol markers, not even necessarily Copic, you could have some of the less expensive brands that work great as well. But basically, you'll find that they do blend a little bit on their own, just kind of as they soak into the paper. And I'm going to bring in these kind of peachy, pinky, corally colors for this little flower. And I will show you all the colors that I used in a little bit here. And it'll slow down so you can do a screenshot if you're curious of the specific colors. Then I have these kind of rust colors here to make them look like terracotta pots. Again, I just have two colors, just kind of putting, you know, an artificial light source. So I have a shadow, you know, underneath the ridge and maybe with kind of a highlight down the center of the pots. And I will come in with a white gel pen as well, just to add some highlights, which is another thing to really kind of step up your coloring. Here I'm showing you a colorless blender. The term blender is a little misleading because you don't really use it to blend colors together. It kind of more so erases. So I use it to kind of come back any places where I came outside the lines, which happens with me because as you can see, I move very quickly. So here I have all the colors here if you want to do a screenshot, but I didn't use too many colors overall, as you can see. So this is kind of a way that might work for you if you're still building your collection. Don't feel like you have to get Copics. What I did, because I wasn't sure if I was going to like alcohol ink markers, I kind of started with a cheaper set and played with those for a little bit to determine if it was worth the investment to start collecting Copics. So that's just something to consider if you're kind of on the fence with the alcohol marker situation. So here I have, I believe, a size 8 white Sakura gel pen, and I'm just kind of willy-nilly going through and putting little white lines for highlights. I put little white dots on some of the spots, but really this adds a lot to your coloring. So don't overthink it. Don't think it has to be perfect with your light source. I honestly do not take any of it that seriously. So it's really intimidating, I think, for some people with Copic coloring, but really just don't put yourself through the ringer. Just have fun coloring, have fun playing. It's just paper, and at the end, it's good practice, and I'm sure it's going to look great. So here I don't have the coordinating dies, so I'm just fussy cutting out. These are my cutter bee scissors. These are my favorite for fussy cutting, but I am using a little bit of a white border. On this one I kind of cut a little bit too close to the pot, but it ended up working out okay just because I knew I was going to nestle one of the little cacti into the pot anyway. So I'm figuring out which one I want to use, which ones line up with which pots, in which sentiment and things like that, and I decided to go with that cute little one that I'm going to use for the front of the card. Now here is my critter book. You may have seen this. I have a couple different books like this, one for my critters and one for my die cut sentiments. This is part of my batching system, and this is how I'm able to create so many cards. Is if I feel like coloring, or if I color like a whole stamp set, I'll put the extra in a little pocket for future use, and then I have a lot ready to go. So if I need a card quickly, or if I'm not feeling particularly inspired or don't feel like coloring but want to make a critter card, then I can kind of refer to this book and pull out what I need. Now this is my storage for my stencils. I actually have 3 of these. These are all from A Colorful Life Designs. I am on the design team, and I have so many of these stencils. This is, oh my gosh, such a great shop. It's a small woman-owned business in Texas, and she makes all these herself. She manufactures them, cuts them, packs them. And this is the 4 mid-century shadow stencil. You do get the little inner pieces as well, which is really great for versatility and masking. But I'm going to load this up. This is actually a card base, so 110 pound Neenah Classic Crest. I'm working right on the card base, and I'm just kind of lining the stencil up and masking off on the top and bottom because I don't want all 4 of the openings depicted on my composition. I just want 3 of them. And here I'm using my blending brushes. These are from the Rabbit Hole Designs, and I'm just using residual ink that's left over on my brushes. And this ink is more than likely Catherine Pooler. That's what I tend to use most of the time, but I didn't want full tilt concentrated color, so I'm just using the residual ink left over on my brushes because I often don't clean them. And in my mind I'm kind of thinking like, I don't know, like a pretty bright desert sunset or something like that because of the cactus. So I'm just kind of working through these colors, and then I will remove this low tack tape and reveal this fun, interesting background that I'm going to set the cactus up on. So I do need to figure out which sentiment I'm going to use. I do ultimately end up putting one on the front and on the inside of the card. There's lots of cute punny stamps to choose from in this set, so I had to kind of pick and choose which ones I wanted. And I'm going to stamp one on the front, so I'm going to just load it up in my Misty. And the beauty of the Misty is if you aren't sure how it's going to look, or you aren't sure about the placement, you can lay down a little piece of acetate and kind of just stamp on there with it overlaying your layout to make sure that you like the look. But I was pretty confident or lazy, you pick, and I just went with it, and I stamped in kind of a medium gray color, "You're looking sharp." So that's the first little pun to go with this little cute cactus. And then on the inside, I'm going to stamp a different one in the same color. So the original size Misty that I have here is big enough to kind of open the card easily and stamp on the inside. But as you saw, I do have the mini Misty as well. So just use whatever you have, or obviously you can do this with regular acrylic blocks as well. You don't have to have a Misty, so use whatever you have. But I'm just going to stamp this down and put down the Misty door and use my my sleeve to apply some pressure. I do have a press tool, but I don't know, I just felt compelled to use my sleeve. This is one of my bling edge boxes, chocked full of many of the sparkle blends from Doodle's Paper Playground, which sadly has just closed up her shop, but I did stock up big time on her closing sale. And these really cool square rhinestones are just gorgeous. They're all different sizes. They're not the easiest to pick up with the jewel picker, I'm not going to lie, but they are stunning. And I laid a smattering of those down with some liquid glue on the front of the card, and then decided to lay a shadow with some colored pencil just underneath the little clay pot, just so it's not completely floating in this kind of random layout that I have here. So that will also add a lot to your card. But I did decide to go grab another one of those cute little critters from my book there and lay it on the inside of the card over the sentiment. So I rounded the one corner, and that's going to finish the card. So nice and easy, flat. It's got a little bit of dimension from the little popped up cactus and the blingage, but overall not a lot of bulk. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you spending time with me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.